It is very much about watches and profit forecasts thanks to, they say, tighter cost controls.
And actually, when you dig down into where it's been doing pretty well. It's opened up in Canada. It's spent more time there. It's done well. But actually, same size buildings, their sales were pretty flat. They've not managed to grow. Sales there were falling. Is in rival leisure cricket or
darts.
Darts is
the whole cart. Legislation is in place. Would I start that small business again today? No.
Jane Kirkham, a Labour MP, interrupted.
Does the right honourable member in the party opposite said that the social chapter and the national minimum wage would cost...
But Kevin Hollinrake didn't think that was quite the same. The minimum wage would disproportionately affect small firms. How?
Someone can fail to turn up, and then because they will now have rights against unfair to be able to hold a small business to ransom. And
Bergen, an independent MP, couldn't see that happening.
As to what the Shadow Minister's saying about people being in hearing from the moment they take...
The point I was making is that it may go all the way to... It doesn't. That small business will have to bring consultants in, will have to speak...
Assessment for the bill. It said the cost of upgrading workers' rights could be £5 billion a year, though it went on to argue that was a modest amount compared to how much companies spent on employing people overall, and there would be other benefits to the change. Kevin Hollinrake wasn't impressed.
Increased industrial action and tax rises to pay for increased pay demands. Check your impact assessment. 1970s, here we come. There is much more, but in short, Madam Speaker, it will all mean that the tail will be wagging the dog.
The Lib Dems broadly backed the bill, but speaking for the party, Sarah Gibson didn't think the plans for carers or on sick pay went far enough.
At £116.75 per week, statutory sick pay remains far below the minimum wage. And it's effectively a disincentive to take time off.
The SNP's Chris Law reckoned many of Labour's plans had been kicked into the long grass of consultation, and others, like the right to switch off outside the office, were missing altogether.
This is government looking overly cautious and hesitant. But what people have been writing to me about in these last weeks is this is because they want to delay to find a convenient way out of implementing them.
The bill comfortably cleared its first parliamentary hurdle, but MPs will now be putting the work in to look at it in more detail.
Alicia McCarthy reporting. You can hear more on events yesterday in Parliament at 9 o'clock on Radio 4 Extra and on digital radio.
This gathering, Steve.
Well, first of all, this is about Symbol's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Western nations, also the outside world, that attempt...
Immense pressure. I think we should be finding every possible route to maintain the existing prison estate, to expand it, to keep those criminals within prison, to remove the 10,000 foreign national offenders. These are individuals who are in our jails but come from other countries as quickly as possible back to their home countries to free up capacity. That would be my instinct, rather than reaching for the lever of releasing people early. Remember, some of those who were released earlier in the summer have already gone on to reoffend, at times committing serious crimes, sexual crimes, for example, against members of the public. So I would place a very, very high bar on doing this. And I worry that the Labour government is reaching for that lever too quickly. You saw, for example, during the riots, that extra places within our prisons were able to be found at very short notice, 500 extra places on that occasion. So whilst I don't pretend this is easy, our prisons are under immense strain. In fact, I think we should be building more prisons, but that's for the longer term. I think there should be great care and sensitivity before releasing people early onto our streets.
The trouble is, if you're elected leader of the Conservative Party, leader of the opposition, you will say the government should be building more prisons, and they will turn around and say, well, you were in government for 14 years as Conservatives. These are problems of your making.
Well, it's not my style to shirk responsibility. I've been painfully honest about the mistakes of the last Conservative government. That's been at the heart of my leadership campaign. But on prisons, we did actually build more prison places than the prior Labour government. So we did expand the prison estate. But I think we need to...
But you accept not enough.
But not enough. We should have built more. I would like us to be building more. And in particular, using those places to lock up what I call hyper-prolific offenders, those who are committing very large numbers of offences. We all believe in second chances, third chances, but we don't believe in 10 or 20th chances. And at the moment, almost 60% of all offences are committed by just under 10% of criminals. And those individuals should be in our jail keeping the public safe.
You have made immigration very much the core of your campaign. Can you explain to people watching this morning why they should listen to you when you talk about leaving the European Court?
The A470, the main road from North to South Wales, runs adjacent to the line, and the emergency services were working from it at a point which is quite close to the site of the collision.
As more up-to-date news.
Thank you, Sally. And let's start with the fact that more than 1,000 more inmates are being given early release from prisons in England and Wales today in a bid to solve the overcrowding crisis. It follows the early release of 1,700 inmates last month and comes as the government launches a sentencing review to try to consider tougher non-custodial punishments instead. Our senior UK correspondent, Sima Kotecha, explains.
For the government, this is about dealing with the overcrowding in prisons. So today, 1,100 inmates will be released early. Instead of being freed 50% into their sentence, which used to be normal, they'll now be let out at 40% of their term. Ministers say this won't include murderers and those convicted of sex crimes and terrorism. But for the first time, it will include those serving 5 years or more. In September, the government released 1,700 prisoners as part of the same scheme to ease the pressure on the system.
If we had not done this, we faced courts unable to hold trials, police unable to make arrests, and a total breakdown of law and order.
But 37 people who shouldn't have been let out were, due to how their sentences had been logged. All have since been returned to jail. And some of those who should have had an electronic tag fitted to monitor their movements didn't. The government's also launching a sentencing review, which will be led by the former Conservative Justice Secretary, David Gauke. It's understood that scrapping shorter sentences will be considered. It will also look at whether or not tougher sentences are needed for crimes against women and girls, and what can be done to tackle prolific offending. Sima Kotecha, BBC News.
Family and friends of Chris Cabba say they have been failed by the system after a police firearms officer was cleared of his murder. Sergeant Martin Blake told the old... Say that, Carol, we never say that.
Thanks, John. Now, the vote to choose the next leader of the Conservative Party closes next week, with the winner announced on Saturday, the 2nd of November.
We're nearly there. 6 candidates have been whittled down to 2 since July. One of them is Kemi Badenoch, and the other, Robert Jenrick, joins us now on the sofa. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. It's lovely to be here.
Can we start with events overnight? Martin Blake, a firearms officer, was cleared of murder at the Old Bailey yesterday. We've seen protests and a lot of upset from the family of Chris Cabba, the man who died. You have described Martin Blake, the officer, as a hero. And I just wonder whether at a time when emotions are high and it's clearly very sensitive, is that definitely the right approach?
Every day, they deserve our respect, they deserve our support, and Martin Blake has been found not guilty. And so, it is important that we recognise that, and I think he's been treated very badly, frankly. He shouldn't have been dragged through the courts like this. I say, just imagine what he's been through over recent months. This has been an appalling experience for him, and we should be supporting him right now.
We're seeing more prisoners being released early today because of overcrowding in prisons. What would you be doing? What would you suggest is the right thing to do at this point? Is that something you agree with?
I don't agree with it. It's not an easy situation because our prisons are under immense pressure. I think we should be finding every possible route to maintain the existing prison estate, to expand it, to keep those criminals within prison, to remove the 10,000 foreign national offenders. These are individuals who are in our jails but come from other countries as quickly as possible back to their home countries to free up capacity. That would be my instinct rather than reaching for the lever of releasing people early. Remember, some of those who were released earlier in the summer have already gone on to reoffend, at times committing serious crimes, sexual crimes, for example, against members of the public. So I would place a very, very high bar on doing this. And I worry that the Labour government is reaching for that lever too quickly.